and welcome to the first episode of the Hope That Helps podcast. I'm Ramsey.
I'm Camille. We're so excited to have y'all here. Today, we're going to be talking about new things, which this is very new. We're excited about that. You're new to us, or new to me at least. I know some of y'all know Ramsey already.
Yeah, you might know me from TikTok or YouTube as Fostering Single. I've been sharing on social media for a while now about foster care and adoption and some other things that I'm passionate about, a little bit about our life. And so if you are new to me, a few things. I do have 2 kiddos that are adopted from foster care. I love them so much. We have a home here with our dog, Luna. And in our meantime, we just like to spend time with friends and family. Zach and Camille see a lot of us around here, and she is such a good friend of mine. I'm so excited to kind of introduce her more to the online world.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm so new to this because I'm like, if you go to my Instagram, I just like don't do anything.
Well, let me just say, I want to brag on her a minute because I do feel like Camille has a lot of value to share, and I'm just really excited for her to get into space. And I think she's just so creative and articulate. And so it's going to be so much fun hosting this with you. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name's Camille, obviously. Zach, my husband, and I live here in North Little Rock. We have 2 little kitty cats. We're cat parents. We have been struggling with a little bit of infertility, and so that's brought us to look into foster care, which we work with kids at the Arkansas Dream Center, and we just have a passion for kids and loving on them. And so there's been multiple things that have brought us to foster care. One of those things being becoming better friends with Ramsey. One day I was literally like, hey, can I pick your brain about this? Because I feel like God's really pulling us this way and we want to know more. So yeah, but Zach and I have been married for 7 years and we're going strong, and it's been a good life.
I love that. And we were debating earlier how we really became friends. I know we met at church.
Yeah.
And we have gotten the opportunity to serve on the worship team together and to be in a life group together. Yep. But I feel like what really sealed the deal in our friendship was the morning walks.
Oh, yeah. I guess so. I know I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, how did we actually become friends? Because you asked me to lunch with our friend Hannah, and then we didn't quite hang out after that. Not because we didn't want to, but just, life. And then
I pressured Camille into dinner with us. I was like, come with us. I think you're really cool. And then, life kind of happened. And then we joined a life group together and realized we lived really close to each other.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So the morning walk kind of became a thing. Yeah. And I feel like from there, we got to be really intentional with each other and learn more about what we're passionate about. And we had a lot of really similar passions and ways of thinking and beliefs and core values. And so I think that that's kind of what's led us here today.
Totally.
To starting a podcast.
Yeah. I think we just talk a lot.
We do.
We have a lot to say. Let's just make a podcast.
We could go on a morning walk for an hour and then stand for another 3 hours.
Your poor
still
kids.
Talking. Yeah. My kids have heard a lot of our conversations, and Zach too, over the course of our friendship. But I think that the podcast is a perfect medium for us to talk about some of those things. Yeah. And for you guys to hear it too.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think as far as the podcast goes, our mission and I guess our heart behind, sharing this information with you guys is, one, to shine a light on, some issues surrounding foster care and adoption, but not just foster care and adoption. I feel like we're passionate about a lot of things, very justice-oriented people. We work with a lot of populations where we live that, I feel like need help. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is kind of what we want to have conversations around in a very lighthearted and fun way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know for Zach and me, we've been our job has been very much we're just submerged in this culture and this specific lifestyle that I think it's we can't look away anymore. And so that's what's really brought us here to do fostering. And so I know you have a similar, story with your job and everything, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that, if we can just encourage anybody else to step into what they're passionate about and to talk about hard topics and to maybe do something kind of crazy. I think that's kind of why we titled this episode New Things, is like, not only are we starting a new podcast, but Camille and Zach are very much right now stepping into like a new season of foster parenting. And I think just taking those leaps of faith, it's not just foster parenting, but in general, sharing with you the ups and downs of that and, where God is working on us in that.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this season has been like nonstop new things. Like I literally started a new part of my job. Like I was working in the same place, but new position. So it's like a new location, like new people. And then like we decided to foster. So it's like becoming new friends or having new friends in that space, So I think it's just one thing after another. And so I'm learning to embrace that. And I definitely want to encourage others. Like, if you're passionate about something, go for it. Because that's something I'm really bad about, is like being standoffish and like, do I want to do this? Do I not? Like, so that's huge on my heart right now.
Yeah. I feel like, to the point of what you said earlier, is like, you can't see these things happening and just look away. I think we both have those kind of personalities, is like, it is sometimes hard to act, but like we know we need to act.
Right.
And I think even, starting this podcast and talking about these things is a form of us stepping out on faith and acting and hopefully impacting somebody else through that.
Yep.
I think that for me, that has just definitely been a theme of my life, is just doing something that seems seemingly crazy to other people, including single foster parenting. But yeah, there's a lot of new coming that has come and is to come. So I'm really excited about this opportunity to just get to share with everybody.
Yeah.
Through that.
I can totally relate to that. I feel like Zach's and my life together has been like one thing after another of like God just asking us to like do some crazy stuff. Like we moved away from home for the first 2 years of our marriage, and we, didn't really know anybody. And then we decided to move back home, and like, it's just like, there's just been a constant like trust and like, hey, just trust me. Like, come on along for the ride.
Absolutely. I think too, something like about me sharing on social media is sometimes it looks like it wasn't that hard to say yes. And I think the reality is that like, no matter what God's asking you to do, if that's move away from home, if that's start a new job, if that's step into parenting or, advocating in any realm, like it is going to be a challenge. Yeah. It's going to be sometimes on blind faith, where you can't really see the next step. And I think sometimes that gets lost in like the ending of my story, particularly. I feel like I'm in a different place, obviously, in our journey, where like we've kind of rounded out the chapter, but it didn't come without an immense amount of like, anxiety about the future and not knowing, if I was doing the right thing. And I think I don't want that to get lost, especially in this podcast, that like I have all the answers or you have all the answers as you walk through it. It's like together we hope to help other people, navigate these things, but we're not perfect at it.
No.
And it's not going to come without a challenge.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. Definitely.
I feel like that's just following God.
Yeah.
Just playing for your life in general.
I think that's actually something I had, like, it wasn't a vision, but it was just like a picture God showed me one time when I was like switching schools in college. And it literally was that of like, I was driving on a dark road and I couldn't see over this like hill. And I feel like God was just like, hey, you can't see in front of you. You can only see like 2 steps and that's it. And sometimes you just have to trust that. And that's been like the theme of my life since then, pretty much, And I feel like everybody can relate to that. I think that I had this view of my life that it would just be so laid out. And that is not how it's been, but it's been a huge growth experience and a learning experience. And I'm so grateful for that. But it's like, yeah, you don't know what's always ahead of you. And sometimes you just got to like go for it.
Absolutely. And I think that brings us to like a really good point in the show where we want to answer questions that you guys are asking us. And we had some questions this week. And one of the questions was asking something about, how did we know that this was something we were supposed to be doing? Specifically talking about foster care. How did we know that God was asking us to do this? And then how did we step out and take that leap of faith? What did that look like for us?
Yeah.
Camille, do you want to?
Oh gosh. Yeah. I think whenever I saw this question, I was like, oh gosh, how did I know? Because I think it was, again, it was such a leap of faith to do this. It's scary. So like I was saying, my husband, Zach, and I, we had some fertility issues. And honestly, there wasn't even really anything that was preventing us from getting, pregnant. So I think it was it felt very much like it was just a not yet. And so it felt like, okay, what are we going to do in the season of waiting? And we had so many different people around us that were fostering, like you guys, and some of our other friends at church. And I just felt like we were surrounded more and more by this amazing thing. And again, we were submerged in it also with the kids that we work with. Maybe they're not in foster care, but a lot of their lives look very similar to children that are in foster care. And so it was a very slow process. I was on board before Zach was. But I think my heart, I just really wanted children in my home. And I was like, what does that look like right now? Right now I can't, or I'm not having a child biologically right now. So what can I do to help kids around me, that, and I'm really passionate about that. I think that also tied into just my job. I felt way more purpose in my job and doing that. So a lot of that ties in, and I'm not going to go into all that right now, but, it was a slow process. It was God working on my heart and not necessarily replacing the desire of having a biological child with fostering and adoption, but bringing in a new passion for me of wanting to do this. So yeah, I mean, and I've always dreamed of doing this. I think that a lot of people who foster, it's something that maybe they've always wanted to do. Just for me, it wasn't something that I knew that I wanted to do first. I always thought I wanted to have kids first. And so that was an interesting switch. So no, I'm doing this first and getting excited about this first. So again, just a slow process, but definitely a leap of faith in a lot of ways. Cause it's scary. It's it's scary to jump into, because you don't know a lot about it. And that was another thing is I kind of knew about it. I knew, I dealt with a lot of kids that had trauma and like I said, just very similar situations, but overall it's just it's so different bringing that into your home and parenting that, as you know.
Absolutely. I think I have, in a way, a similar story to that and how I came to kind of knowing that it was something that I wanted to do. Similarly to you, I'm actually adopted. So a lot of people don't know that, but I am adopted. And so it was something that I always knew I wanted to do, an area I knew I wanted to help in. But very much like you, I had a different picture of what that was going to look like. I think as a little girl, you grow up and you think about getting married and having kids and having a big home and a nice job. You kind of dream out your future. And like you said, it's all laid out for you. And I woke up one day, 27 and single, still having the desire to help in foster care and adoption, and just really not knowing if that was going to be a reality for me. And, thinking through, I felt like God started working on my heart in that, kind of the same way, preparing me to do it differently than how I had expected and in a different season. And I think when you guys are asking, how did you know? Sometimes just God asks you to do something that I feel like most of the time God asks you to do something that you wouldn't have thought of yourself or wasn't maybe how you had originally dreamed of it happening, but it's better. And I think for me, like I said, I was 27 and single and thinking, oh gosh, can I still help in this space? Like, what if God is asking me to be single, period? And, is this something that I still feel called to? And I think growing up in the church, I had that big question mark of like, could God call a single woman to make an impact in this way? And I wrestled with that for a long time. And I just felt like I kept finishing this sentence of like, he was saying, you are supposed to foster. And I said, yeah, when I'm married, you're supposed to foster. When I have my own kids, you're supposed to foster. When, I get a better job or I have a bigger house. And I know you and Zach, like you shared, have had those same like questions of like, is this the right time? Is this really what God is asking us to do? But I do know that even though it's been really difficult at moments, like I feel like he has blessed it. And I felt like an overwhelming peace, like just knowing that I did step out and did it outside of what my brain maybe thought, but like I followed my heart and I followed like what I feel like God was asking me to do. And I feel like it's been very blessed. And that doesn't mean it's been very easy, but it's been very blessed. Yeah. And I think if you're wondering if it's for you, I would just say, well, for us being people of faith, pray, pray, consider, ask people around you, kind of like Camille was saying too, like when they started, trying to work out if this was for them, I think they consulted a lot of people. They reached out to people that were in this and doing this. And I think that was an important step of, taking that leap of faith. Maybe they didn't leap right then, but they said, hey, we're going to have these conversations and we're going to start these conversations and even addressing other things. Like for me, maybe that's, addressing things about my own adoption or things like that and my singleness. And for them, it was addressing things like infertility and other things they were going through and saying, fostering's not going to fix those things. It's not going to heal those things. But is it something that we feel like God is calling us to, regardless of what our circumstances look like? And I feel like that's been my story, is like the regardless, will you be obedient to me regardless? And there's wisdom in that. Like you need to have wisdom.
Absolutely.
But I think it's like, are you going to do what I'm asking you to do no matter what? And that can be a scary, like you said, a very scary thing.
Well, I think it's hard to know sometimes. Like it's hard to know, like, I think I've talked to Zach about this so much, like what's like wisdom and what's like stepping out in faith, Absolutely. Like I think it's really hard to hold those two things, especially if like, 100%. For me and Zach, like just, we don't make a ton of money. We're in nonprofit. Like there's a lot of things there that I think it's just like, it felt like, how can we help? Like, I feel like we're just not in that place. But again, it's like, regardless, like the Lord saying, I'm going to provide for you. I'm just asking you to do this. Or you're going to be obedient, and it's like, I don't know if that's very wise. Like that doesn't feel wise.
It doesn't. And I think on the other side of it, like I have to constantly remind myself and look backwards because I'm already in this. Like I've already taken the leap, like to look back and say, again, have that peace and like, no, God has come through for my family every single time, every time. And even when I thought we were not going to make it, whether that be, emotionally, financially, like physically, like we've had, a lot of things go on in our home. And I think that to look back and kind of have that archive almost of like how God has pulled through, that's also when you might take a step and then it's like, man, that does not feel confirmed. I do not feel peace about that. And that I would say, listen to that as well. Like not everybody is meant to do what we are doing. Absolutely. But you are meant to do something, and whatever God is calling you to, I believe he'll bless it. And you'll be able to look back and say, like, I know God came through on this. Regardless.
That's so good. That's so good. So I think some people also asked like more practical side of like, how did we get into it? Because I think there is so much like unknown with this. Like, I don't know. Like, I think there's just, there's information out there if you look for it, but it's such a, I don't know. It's just a space that's not talked about very much. So can you talk about that a little bit? Cause you're on the other side of it. I'm kind of in the like space of learning still, like, we're technically not licensed yet. Like we're almost there. So I'd love to hear from you about that.
I actually do get a lot of questions on the internet about like very specific, like practical things, which I think is funny because to me, growing up in this space too, I'm like, oh, I thought that people knew more about how to do this and it's just not out there. So I feel like this is valuable information as well, even though it's like the more practical side. So if you are looking to start foster care specifically, I think the other hard thing is that it's different between states. And so what might be something that you would do in one state might not be something you would do in another state. But I think the best place to start, if you are wanting to take this leap of faith, is to look for agencies in your area or to contact, DCFS, that's the Division of Children and Family Services, or your DHS, Department of Human Services office directly. You can do either of those things. We're both working with an agency here in our state, and people choose not to work with an agency for different reasons or not to work with the state for different reasons. But you just need to vet out what you think is best for you. And if you reach out to them, most states in our nation right now are in desperate need of foster parents. And so, they will reach back out to you. So I would say shoot an email if they have an interest form online, fill out an interest form with an agency, kind of get connected. If you know somebody who's already serving in this area, kind of like Camille and Zach did with me, I was able to connect them to somebody as well. And so I know that can be intimidating. And I made a lot of excuses of like, well, I just don't know how to do it, so I'm not going to. Or so-and-so didn't email me back, so maybe I'll just not. And I would just encourage you to press in if it's something you feel like you are supposed to do. I think more practically, that's really how to take that first step. And then I would also say, talk to your family and friends, like talk to your community around you, because it's really important to make sure you have support. That was like such a big first step for me. And I know for you guys too, just making sure that your people are on board.
Yeah. And I think that was a scary step. Like, honestly, I was like really scared to tell people. I don't know why, like looking back, I'm like, of course people are going to be supportive. But I think stepping into something like this, where maybe your family has no clue about it like you do. So it's like, they don't know either. And so it's like having to maybe educate or like explain things like that can feel very overwhelming when you're learning yourself. But yeah, I think definitely like talk to your family and friends, like look for that support with them because it's there. Like if you have a good community around you, hopefully you do, even if it's small, like I think that like there's going to be help there. And that feels very validating and like feels like you can move forward in that,
Absolutely. I think support from my family and friends was like so paramount, but I'm also really hard-headed. So like I put off telling them because I was like, I know I'm going to do it regardless. Like I asked my parents, like, what would you think about me doing this when I'd already filled out like half the paperwork?
Well, that's something I like on our talks or on our walks. Talks and walks. I literally was like, Ramsey, I'm so scared. Like, I haven't told these people yet. Like, I don't know how to tell them. And you're like, just do it. Like, just tell them you're doing it and just own it. And I was like, it's so easy for you to say that.
Well, I do have more of that personality, but I will say, like, I do think it's important to protect,
yes,
yourself in, again, whatever leap of faith you're stepping on. If you know God has called you to something, sometimes there is a season of like needing to protect that and make sure that you are very secure in what you're doing. I think I encourage you in that too, is just like,
sure.
Yes, speak it, but also know it for yourself and make sure you know it before you put it out there, that, you're confident in your decision and what God has called you to do. And that again applies to everything. Not everybody needs to know your business, in that way of just like making sure that you keep yourself protected. But I think that, making sure you have the support and making sure you take those first steps. Can I tell a funny story really quick?
Go for it.
So I've told this a couple times on social media, but for me, actually taking that first step, it was really funny. I had kind of been, like I was sharing earlier, like filling in the blanks of like, okay, I'll do it later. I'll do it when I'm married. I'll do it, here or there, whatever. And I was in the shower on Thanksgiving Day and I felt so strongly in my heart, like, if you don't just take the first step right now, you are not going to.
Oof.
And I just remember, because I've been procrastinating. And maybe there are some of you out there that are procrastinating on whatever it is. You're supposed to start a business. You're supposed to be pursuing a relationship with someone. You're supposed to be whatever it is, doing ministry, starting a new job, fostering children, whatever it is. There might be something that you're supposed to be doing and you're procrastinating. And I felt so strongly like, if you don't do it right now, you're not going to, because you have had all the time in the world to fill out an interest form. It takes 5 minutes. You've been saying for 5 months you're going to fill out a 5-minute interest form. And so right there on Thanksgiving Day in the shower, I got out and got my phone and got back in the shower. I'm not kidding. And filled out the interest form. Because for me, it was just like a small action of like doing what I said I was going to do.
Right.
And I had told a couple people, like, I think I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. But like thinking and wanting to do it and actually doing it are two different things. So I would just encourage you, if you need to take a practical step, like, don't procrastinate. For sure. Do what you're supposed to do.
I think too, like what you said, which, you know, dealing with DCFS and like all, even like the call going through different organizations, you know, sometimes they're not that quick to get back to you. And so it's like someone like me, whenever I've like done the thing to reach out and then I don't hear anything back for a while, it's like hard for me to like do it again.
Yeah.
So thankfully, like Zach helps me in that, but like that's hard to
absolutely
add to your procrastination, because like I'm a huge procrastinator.
Well, you take a step of faith and then you're like, I got to take the same step again and maybe again.
And you got to like, for me, it's almost like I'm processing it all over again. Like, okay, here I go. Press the button.
like it was hard enough the first time. It's also hard enough the second time.
Yeah.
And, so the anxiety can still be there for sure. It's very funny. I feel like we both kind of felt similarly about starting this podcast. Yeah. Like, man, we're just going to have to do the thing.
Woof.
And we're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
I'm like, oh. I keep telling you, I'm like, I'm so excited. And I'm like, I'm so nervous when I'm start talking.
It is. But I think that's when you know where you're supposed to be, is like whenever you feel just an excitement, but also like a nervousness. And there is a little bit of tension in that. But I think that's when you know that you're doing what you need to be doing.
Oh, that's literally what Zach's been telling me. He's like, honestly, I'd be like I'd be a little nervous if you weren't scared. And I'm like, well, that's good to know.
Absolutely. Anyway. So whether you're scared or not, whether you feel like you're in the position or not, regardless, maybe you just need to take a leap of faith.
Thanks so much for being here. We loved having you. We will be back next week with a new episode.
Yeah, and until then, you can find us on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Hope That Helps Pod.
Yeah, and we love getting your questions in. If you have questions, we'll be answering them every episode. You can email those at hopethathelpspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, we're going to give a special thank you really quick to our production team, Zach Grimes and Eric Pardo.
Whoop, whoop. Well,
hope that helps.